In this video, I'm going to talk about methods. Methods are an abstraction, and they come in two flavors: procedures and functions. Now, you're going to hear different programmers use these terms almost interchangeably. Because I'm a teacher, and I want you to fully understand the differences between them, I'm going to split the hairs and make sure that we use these terms appropriately by their purest definition. Because the way I have you using these terms, I think, is the cleanest that I've found, and it makes the most sense. Okay? So I'm taking this from a very practical standpoint, especially when you're first learning. So flavor one of a method is procedures. Okay? And flavor two is functions. So all methods can be broken down into one of two types: procedures and functions. Okay? Now, procedures are simple. They just do things. It's literally just a named block of code that you call. The command is the procedure. Okay? The instruction is the name of the procedure. Functions always return a value. Okay? I'm going to say that again. Functions always return a value. Now, in languages like Java, methods that return void, which is the word for nothing, are called procedures. And I've had students argue, well, that's returning a value. You're splitting hairs at that point. That's even splitting hairs for me. Okay, void methods are procedures. Any other data type that's actually a value coming back is a function. Okay, so procedures are named blocks of code that just do something. Okay, functions return a value, and there's implications when you get a value back that we're going to talk about. And the reason we're going to spend some time on that is that's where a lot of students get into trouble and get very confused. All right, so a procedure call is simply call the procedure. You would literally say, if my procedure is called do something cool, it would literally be do something cool, open, close parentheses, semicolon. And what goes in here are the parameters, if there are any. In a procedure, you don't have to have them. So basically, do something cool, that's going to send execution to this block of code. Do something cool, and it's going to begin to run it. How that's implemented and the signature line of the methods, we'll get into all of that in the languages. All right, a function call is going to return a value. So a function call is always going to be made on the right-hand side of an assignment operator, which means I need a variable to catch, if you will, the returned value. This is the number one mistake students make when they first start coding, from what I have seen after years of teaching this. Okay? It's an easy thing to not understand at first. But if my function returns a double, I need a double variable, and here I call it my function result, okay, equals, and I'm calling the function calculate something cool. So it's doing some sort of calculation and giving me a value back, which is evaluated for its return value. Let's say it brings me back 42.6. That 42.6 will now be stored in a double pointed to by that token. Okay? So a function call must have a place to store the result. If you don't store the result, the function is still going to happen, it's still going to return the value, and you have no way to access that value. Because the value has come back from the function, which is now out of scope and on the garbage pile, ready for the garbage collector, okay? And all of a sudden, you go to the next line of code, the computer's like, well, you did nothing with that. This guy's not paying attention, so we're just going to move on. And you're like, but I calculated that. How do I get that value? Well, you should have caught it in a variable. You need to store the state of the returning value, right? You've got to store it somewhere so that you can then say, oh, now I'm going to print out the value of that calculation, okay? Why call a function if you're not going to use the value, okay? So procedures, you just call them and let them go, okay? Functions, return a value. So the function call is on the right-hand side of an assignment operator. So when I come up to a student who's working hard and they're slaving away in the lab and they're just baffled, I'll say, is it a function or a procedure? And they'll look at, in whatever language, is it returning a value? Yes, okay. Why is it not on the right-hand, it's just like this. Well, you're not storing it anywhere. So how do you expect to access that value? So be ahead of that up front, okay? Procedures are fire and forget. You call it, it goes and does it, and then it's going to move to the next line of code. A function is going to go do it, but you've got to store that value if you ever want to use it. Otherwise, your computer is going to call you an idiot under its breath. And they do. They talk about you behind your back. Okay? So that's important. Okay? That's really important that you understand how that works. So, to be completely explicit, data type, variable name, assignment operator, function call that returns a value, okay? And end of statement, just like int x equals 4, same thing. But this is going to be a variable that's going to hold the value that is returned by that function, okay? It's going to be returned by that function. All right, and notice I still have my end of statement indicators, little precursor to some of those languages. All right, in the next video, we're going to go a step further and talk about parameters for methods, which can be procedures or functions, and we're going to talk about scope a little bit. All right, and so I'll see you on the other side.